Let me introduce myself. My name is Chencho Norbu, Executive Director of Asian Forest Cooperation Organization. In short, we call AFoCO. AFoCO is an intergovernmental organization established in 2018 with Secretariat office based in Seoul. The organization started as an ASEAN-Korea Forest Partnership and began its field operation from 2012. Currently, we have 13 parties and 2 observer countries. About 80% of our operation cost is contributed by the Republic of Korea. Our mandate is to strengthen forest cooperation and restore degraded forest landscapes through forest science, technologies, and policy support. The field projects that we have completed or that are ongoing supports our member countries to meet their environment commitments and targets like Bonn Challenge. Some of good examples that we can share include during the Asia Pacific Forest Week in 2019, AFoCO hosted 2 events to support FLR action, that is forest landscape restorations. One on strategy, other on action on the ground discussion. We had participants coming from field, project managers, coordinators, and experts from the international communities. This was very well received by the participants. We have worked or supported the FLR technical guidelines for tropical region in partnership with ITTO. I believe the final draft is already out. Another area where we are working on is forest fire management, which is a big concern in this region and has a direct bearing on the landscape health and climate change. AFoCO has developed a proposal to support Mekong River Basin countries on this fire management. We hope to take it up from this coming season. First, I think we need to look at some facts. If you look at our Bonn Challenge, that was really picked up at the Minister Roundtable meeting in 2011, hosted by IUCN and German government. And later it was reinforced by UN Climate Summit 2014. Now, to support this Bonn Challenge, many regional groups have come up with some targets. For example, Latin America and Caribbean countries came up with 2020 initiative in 2014. African countries came up with initiative FR100 in 2015. In Asia, of course, individual countries made some commitments, but so far not as an Asia Pacific region. So we do have a big opportunity to follow other regions. AFoCO, in consultation with our parties, Secretariat rather, through the assembly sessions, is positively looking forward for some commitments from our member countries. Possibly, we see through 2 proposed windows. One is dryland and drought-prone area restoration in Asia. A proposal we are working with Green Alliance, C4, ICRAF, to restore both agriculture and forest degraded areas in Asia. I'm sure we could encourage countries to set some targets here to support Bonn Challenge. We will be launching this proposal in 2021 at the sideline of World Forest Congress in Seoul. Another opportunity that I see is at the second cycle of nationally determined contribution submission to Paris Agreement. Now, this is a plan by each member country to reduce greenhouse gas and adapt to impacts of climate change under Paris Agreement. We know that many Asian countries have proposed forest management, including restoration and plantation, as one of the means to mitigate and adapt to the climate change. So here is another huge opportunity we have. Like in other regions, a ministerial roundtable meeting in Asia can create a momentum and, of course, some pledges to support Bonn Challenge. So we will be looking forward to a ministerial roundtable in Asia. On these challenges, let me answer this question by combining what I have read and what I have experienced when I was leading the National Land Management Campaign in Bhutan. For policy support, I think it's very important for any program to mainstream into the annual plan or 5-year plan. So that is very key for a successful intervention. So in order to do that, in many cases, it will be very useful for us to have a policy brief on success stories or on pilot studies that we have done it at the local site, or some good studies that has been done elsewhere. So if we can really simplify and present to our decision makers, I'm very hopeful and certain that our approach, the FLR approach, definitely we can get this support. So that's critical. Once we have that policy support, and of course will come the political blessing. So in that sense, as we have guidance and support from the central government, it becomes much easier as we go down to the regional or at the district level planning. So once it is been a part and parcel of the planning process, I would say that half of the work is done in many sense. So when it comes to particularly the FLR approach that we are taking up, of course in many countries it's not new, but in some countries it may be new. So challenge is really how we convince, how we share this information that are available, not limited to the internet, but also in print media. So we have to be a bit aggressive in trying to promote this approach. Probably then we are successful together. On the technical and scientific front, we have many reports or publications that imply there are a number of technologies available, and it is not really a barrier in scaling up FLR actions on the ground. I mean, to some extent it is correct. But probably the question to ask is how well our young professionals working on the ground informed or aware of these studies and technologies. This we need to really look into it. With due respect to our professionals working on the ground or at the research stations, I may ask and particularly say, do they have adequate experience to adjust, adapt this technology to local needs or conditions? My own belief is that frequent guidance and supervisions are important to put FLR into action, and that will gain some experience for them to lead in the years to come. So coming down to working with the landscape community members, I would say that first and foremost we need to prepare is do some homework. We need to know more about the landscape regarding the vegetation type, farming systems, land and soil properties, and of course the drivers of degradation or deforestation. So this will really help you to have communications with the local leaders or local members. Now another aspect which is very important, critical and important is to listen and have a dialogue with the local leaders as well as community members, because we know that at the field level in some pockets some communities members may be too much demanding, but in some pockets some may not be even participating or speaking. So depending on where you are, there is a diverse actually groups. So therefore it's essential to really understand the socio-economic, cultural aspects of the sites of people or community living in. That is another area that we need to look into it. And secondly, how we can create a healthy environment, like open discussion, negotiations with the community members. And this is really important as we move forward in the future to sustain the activities. So we need to nurture a healthy environment as well as to build up our trust among the stakeholders, and that will lead to our success and sustainability of our investments in the years to come. At AFoCO Secretariat, we are all excited that we are celebrating and we are a party to today's celebration in recognizing the importance and contributions that Bonn Challenge has made and will be making in the years to come. Of course, we have seen very impressive results in other parts of the region. At the Asian continent side, we wish to also see some collective efforts to make a commitment, and AFoCO will be very excited to support that, to really see how we can expand, scale up this momentum that is really benefiting not only our local communities but our local ecosystem services. And in particular, this approach, these interventions have proven to provide livelihood for the people, community living near the forest, provide food and water security, and importantly, I want to stress on that water and sanitation. Water in many remote areas are not treated chemically. In fact, the good watershed system or good ecosystem services filters this water, and it's a very clean water they are drinking. So we have many good examples in our region what it means to have a very healthy ecosystem services. And I'm confident as we move forward, as we have more plans for this Bonn Challenge, more targets, our environment is going to get much, much better. So I want to wish all the best. Thank you.
I'm colorblind. I can't differentiate beautiful colors that the average person can see. Red and green look identical to me. I can't see the red color in roses, nor the different colors of balloons. It's the same when I visit a forest. I know I'll never see the different shades of green in the foliage. But do the colors in a forest represent all of nature's beauty? Are you unable to see the intrinsic beauty of a forest? Are you forest blind? Palawan, Philippines. In 2015, CNN declared Palawan the most beautiful island in the world. The island is considered a hidden gem of the Philippines and a paradise for wildlife. But it is the mangrove forest that has made Palawan an idyllic paradise. A mangrove is a unique tropical tree. It is able to grow submerged in coastal waters and also plays an important role in the ocean system. It provides nutrients and shelter to fish. Local people also benefit from the mangrove trees. Fishermen can catch shrimps that are found among the mangroves. Selling shrimps is a lucrative business for the Filipino people. And it has raised the standard of living among Filipino fishermen.
For me, these are life. Okay, in this kind of business, we have earned money. I can help many people. Without this, I don't know how can we live here?
As their living standards improved, the people wanted to increase their income. They were not satisfied with harvesting wild shrimp from the mangrove forest. To make more money, the locals began to farm shrimp. These are shrimp farms in Manila Bay. This area appears to be open sea, but it once was a mangrove forest area. If it weren't for the few mangrove trees that still remain today, one would be hard-pressed to believe that mangroves once grew here. The local fishermen have gotten rid of the mangrove trees and replaced them with shrimp farms. Boosting their income was more important than the forest.
There was a boom in shrimp industry in Hagonoy. That's why every fish pond operator have an idea to expand their belongings. They just decided to uprooted it by machines just to expand their operation.
Some felt guilty about cutting the trees, but they justified it as an unavoidable matter. And most believed that the mangroves would grow back over time. More shrimp farms have sprung around the bay. Here in Chungbuk, Korea, a flock of birds appear at a middle school. They are herons. In Korea, herons are considered harbingers of good fortune. At first, the students and parents were delighted with having these birds nesting close. But not too long after their stay, the birds became a problem. As the number of herons sharply increased, some issues began to emerge. The noise made by the herons was loud and disruptive and the odor from the heron droppings created unsanitary conditions. What made matters worse was herons roosting close to the school cafeteria. The cafeteria windows became covered with heron droppings and feathers. Even on hot summer days, the cafeteria windows had to remain closed. Fed up school parents started to protest. The parents have decided to keep their children at home until the issue is resolved. Their demand is for the school to cut down the trees, which would destroy the heron habitat.
급식실 위생이 보장되지 않은 상태에서 2학기 급식을 실행하는 것은 학생들에게 독약을 먹게 하는 거나 마찬가지이기 때문에
It came down to protecting the health of the students at the cost of removing the heron habitat. It was impossible to save the habitat and also resolve the noise and unsanitary conditions. What did the school eventually decide to do? How did the lives of the Filipino fishermen change after expanding their shrimp farms? The boom in the shrimp farming industry did not last long. Mr. Castro has been operating his shrimp farm for 4 years. These days, he's considering closing his farm. On top of the rising labor costs and shrimp feed costs, the quality of the ocean water has degraded, which has impacted his farm.
Kasi pagka hindi pinalitan ng tubig, mamamatay lahat ng alaga namin. Kaya damadamag yung bakterya at yung virus dun sa lupa. Kaya kailangan araw-araw palit ng tubig. Malulugi kami lagi, puro lugi. Alang hindi kikita yung boss namin, alang pambabaliktad sa yung hulog naming mga isdang, ganyan.
The water pollution in the bay has reached critical levels. The spread of viruses from dead shrimp and leftover feed has hurt the yield of the shrimp farms. Many shrimp farmers have left the bay altogether. Hired farmhands have also felt the pain. If they hadn't uprooted the mangrove trees, they could at least still have wild shrimp to harvest. But that option no longer exists.
It's a punishment from God because we must be the stewards of His creation. But in return, we cut those trees. Just like that. We are not a good steward of God's creation. We are not.
That wasn't the end of their tale of woe. In 2004, a tsunami hit several Southeast Asian nations. The damage was more severe than it should have been because many of the mangrove trees were cut down. A mangrove forest is a natural sea barrier. Only after the people were hit by a devastating tsunami did the locals realize how the mangrove could have protected them.
Let's say the intensity is 5 and the tsunami or wind surge in case of a typhoon comes in, it breaks the force of the tsunami or the wave, which is caused by wind surges or whatever. So that is important to be able to secure the community from devastation of their homes and their lives.
If the catastrophic tsunami event had never happened, the people would probably not appreciate the mangrove forest as much as they do now. Humans only realize the value of a forest once it's gone. The locals were perhaps afflicted by acute forest blindness. So how was the heron problem resolved by the school board? After 3 months of intense debates, a final decision was made. The school committee accepted the parents' demands and cut down 120 pine trees. A small forest that had been around for centuries was razed down in a day.
학습 권위도 보장이 된 것 같고요. 또 급식도 이제 안전한 급식이 이루어질 수 있는 것 같아서 너무 감사하게 생각합니다.
It seemed that the heron problem was solved. But a new problem arose in the following summer. After the herons were forced to leave the middle school grounds, the heron flock began to roost in trees at a nearby apartment complex. Now the apartment residents had to deal with the heron problem.
소음 때문에 짜증이 나는 거죠. 후두덕거리는 소리, 소음, 또 뭐 차에 가면 똥 싸놓지 한두 마리이지 이게.
After the noise and feces became too much to endure, the residents made the same demands that the parents of middle school made. Since the city approved the logging once before, they made the same demands to have the trees cut down.
감벌을 하는 방법 외에는 적당한 방법이 없는 것으로 이렇게 있습니다. 이러다 보면 청주 시내에 소나무 있는 데는 전부 감벌을 해야 되지 않나요?
Giving in to the demands of the residents, the city has scheduled the culling of nearby trees. After this habitat is raised, the flock of herons will probably find a new place in the city to roost next year. And the same problem will arise if they settle down in a residential area. Cutting down the trees is a hasty solution that does not solve a recurring problem. But city officials claim that here, there's no solution except to cut the trees.
사실은 뭐 자연을 보호하자 이렇게 말로는 굉장히 많이 하고 있지만 막상 이해관계가 충돌하게 되면 나한텐 피해 없어야 된다라는 생각이 좀 많은 것 같아요. 그래서 내 주변 말고 다른 곳을 보호하자 이런 게 솔직한 마음이 아닐까 이렇게 생각합니다.
After experiencing the consequences of their actions, the Filipino people have a newfound appreciation for the mangroves. They've found a way to live in harmony with mangrove trees. The villagers living along Sabang River in Palawan stumbled upon a new cash cow to replace shrimp farming. They are tamilok mollusks. Tamiloks are found among mangrove trees. Harvesting them is a laborious task, and spotting them requires skills. They are sold at a high price. Rumors of Tamilok's natural benefits, which includes curing erectile dysfunction, have made the mollusk highly sought.
Lasa po siya ng talaba that tastes like oyster. Then, kumukuha ako nito, ayon sa mga matatanda, pangpalakas daw ng muscle. Then minsan, kumukuha ako, para mayroon akong extra money, extra kita.
While the men harvest tamilok, the women gather clams and crabs. Because the mangrove forest is situated on a tidal flat, many sea creatures live there. Some are eaten for food, and the rest are sold to the market. They live off the mangrove forest.
Fish fund, it's only when people can get their money. But they have mangrove areas, all people are beneficiary. Not only me, not only you, so all of the people are beneficiary.
Filipinos no longer cut down mangrove trees. In fact, they are now planting them. Planting a mangrove simply requires one to stick a mangrove seed into the ground. It's quite easy. And planting mangroves can also help boost tourism revenues. Tourists flock to see the thick mangrove forests. The Filipino people are slowly learning how to live harmoniously with mangroves.
Baka way paramihin, tayo ay magtanim sa itlogang isda, kuna ng pagkain, tamilok na masarap, oy! Hipon na mailap, oy! Maraming salamat kaibigan, kayo ay laging welcome sa Bakhawan. Susunod na taon babalik naman, kami ay laging naghihintay. Salamat po!
Mangrove forests are expanding. They're making a comeback and returning to their original size. Now that the locals realize the value of a forest, they appreciate what it brings to their community. You could say that they are being cured from their forest blindness.
아마 모든 것들이 다 그렇죠. 현재에 있는 가치가 더 중요하기 때문에 미래에 발생할 수 있는 가치에 대해서 그렇게 사람들이 생각하지 않습니다. 지금 있는 100원이 미래에 있는 1000원보다 훨씬 더 중요하다고 생각을 하는 거죠. 숲이라고 하는 것도 이러한 숲이 가지고 있는 가치가 미래에도 계속적으로 발휘되고 더 좋게 나타나야 된다라고 한다면은 지금 그러한 부분에 대해서 생각할 수 있어야 되는 거죠. 근데 지금 숲맹, 숲을 잘 모르는 사람들은 그렇게 생각하지 않는 거죠.
여러분! 큰일 나셨습니다! 큰일 나셨습니다! 여러분! 용량초가 되셨습니다!
On August 8, 2016, there was an awareness campaign in Gwanghwamun Square. Volunteers spread awareness of Overshoot Day. It's a day that marks the time when we have exhausted our annual consumption of resources. The Earth has a limited supply of resources that it produces every year. Humans need to consume within the resource limit in order to achieve a sustainable way of life. So we need to use the limited resources we consume wisely by distributing them evenly throughout the 12 months. But the world population uses all the available resources by August. Then how can we get through the remaining 4 months of the year? We have to dip into future resources. This leaves future generations less to live with.
내년도에 뿌릴 씨앗을 지금 올해 그냥 먹는 그런 표현으로 할 수 있고요. 또 돈으로 따지자 그러면은 이제 은행에 저금해 놓고 이자로 편안하게 생활하다가 이제는 이자를 떠나서 이제 원금을 저희가 사용하고 있는 표현이랄까요?
Humans form many social relations during their lives. Families, friends, peers, and coworkers. We maintain these relationships by being considerate and cherishing one another. This is a natural part of life, and it applies to all generations. People are interconnected with trees from the past, present, and future. Sadly, we only see the present state of the forest without realizing that it was planted centuries ago by our ancestors. It's not a resource that we can squander at will during our lifetime.
Most people don't think this is a real problem. And secondly, those people who think it is a real problem are not willing to make a sacrifice today, pay today, in order to get a much better world for their children and grandchildren. This is very sad, and it is very surprising. So the only thing we can do is to continue to try to convince people that it is their moral duty to do this. They should do this, although they don't want to do it, they should do it.
At one Buddhist temple in Cambodia, the monks commit themselves to seeking nirvana while warding off earthly desires. But the head monk at this temple is known for having a different, special skill. His money-making skill. The monk earns money by growing trees. He tends to his trees in a peculiar way, though. He doesn't tend the forest using any machinery. He just wraps tree trunks with a rope. That's all there is to it.
ធ្វើដាំដំណាំកសិកម្មដូចគ្នាញោមយើងធ្វើដាំស្វាយយើងបានស្វាយដាំចេកបានចេកយ៉ាងណាមិញយើងថែរក្សាព្រៃឈើកាបូនក្រឌីតនេះយើងបានកាបូនក្រឌីតគឺសំដៅទៅដល់ថវិកាគឺយើងបានថវិកា
How is it possible to sell carbon credits? And who would buy carbon credits from these monks? Microsoft, a US company, purchased $1.7 million worth of carbon credits from the temple in 2012. And the company continues to increase its carbon credit purchases every year.
Microsoft ក្រុមហ៊ុន Microsoft គឺយើងលក់ទៅអាមេរិកគឺយើងលក់ 7,000 តន credit មុនដំបូងយើងសាត់បងមុនអញ្ចឹងឆ្នាំនេះរដ្ឋបាលវិឈើយើងត្រៀមលក់ដល់ 200,000 តន credit បើគិតជាដុល្លារស្មើនឹង $3 លានអញ្ចឹងបើយើងគិតជាដុល្លារ
In the past, Oda Menche was a dense forest. About 10 years ago, illegal logging became rampant, and much of the area was converted to farmland. Cambodia's forests were disappearing at an alarming rate, so the monk came up with an idea to persuade the people to care for their forest once again. He preached that the trees are Buddha, and cutting them is like committing a sin. The monk and locals worked together to protect the trees. 6 years have passed since his work began, and the forest is making a rapid comeback.
ហើយតាំងពីដាក់អន្ទាក់តាំងពីអាចឈើដល់ពីអុយបាត់អស់មួយជួយបង្ក្រាបផងគណៈកម្មការជួយបង្ក្រាបផងហើយតាំងលោកសង់មួយចំនួនធំដើរល្បាតសពថ្ងៃតាំងយប់តាំងថ្ងៃក៏រកបានដេកបានពូនណាតាំងទានតាំងអុយនេះលលូង
Wanting to return a forest to its original state should be a natural human response. But why did Microsoft decide to spend $1.7 million to save a remote forest when there's little incentive to do so? How was this transaction made possible? Last October, Typhoon Chaba hit the Korean peninsula. The extensive damage was like a scene from a Hollywood movie. Lethal waves hit the streets. This unprecedented typhoon came about due to climate change. Koreans were indifferent to climate change until it started to directly impact the country.
지금까지 저희가 경험했었던 그런 태풍과는 비교가 되지 않는 그런 강도 세기로 저희가 경험을 했고요. 그래서 아마 극한 기후 현상들이 차바의 사례처럼 굉장히 빈번하게 또 강하게 다가올 그런 가능성이 높습니다. 그래서 기후변화의 심각성들을 좀 더 알리는 또 우리가 인지할 수 있는 시그널이라고 또 말씀을 드릴 수가 있겠습니다.
Today, climate change is an issue that all countries need to address. At the Rio Olympics opening ceremony, there was a performance that sent a message that everyone could understand. A video appealed to viewers worldwide to protect trees because they're vital for securing a bright future for mankind. The world is reaching critical levels. Greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide are raising global temperatures. There have been severe droughts around the world. If the pace of pollution continues unabated, humankind will face an unexistential threat. World leaders gathered at Kyoto, Japan, to agree on reducing global emissions and ratify the Kyoto Protocol.
京都議定書なぜ大事なのかっていうのは、一つは世界で初めて、炭素の排出削減をするということで世界が合意したっていうことですね。これがもう世界で多分歴史上初めてのことなので、これはもう非常に大事だと。2番目にそれを実現するための方法として取引ですね、トレーディングっていうのを、これもまた世界で初めて、国際合意をして導入したということですね。
Carbon transactions begin with the measuring the reduction of carbon emissions. When a company fails to reach its carbon reduction target, it can purchase carbon credits from a second party that has a surplus in carbon credits. This allows the company to meet its target. There's another system in place to reach carbon reduction targets. This entails planting new trees so that they will absorb carbon emissions. This also allows companies to trade the carbon credits they get from the trees. The carbon credit transaction in Cambodia is the selling of surplus carbon credits.
取引制度があるおかげで、お金が先進国から途上国へ森を守るためにぐるぐるとこう回っていく仕組みができたわけです。それはもう間違いなくイノベーションですね。ですから、炭素を減らすという世界共通の難しい課題を解決するためのものすごくイノベーティブな道具として発見されたと。
A tree has two sides to it. It can absorb carbon emissions in the air, but it can also release carbon dioxide if it's cut down for firewood. When a tree is cut down, it can no longer absorb carbon emissions. After a tree is turned into a log, it can be burned as a fuel, which will release carbon dioxide. Hence, preserving trees is the most effective way for combating global warming. In the real world, though, preserving trees is not a simple matter. A large swath of the world population cannot make a living without inflicting harm to forest lands.
ទីមួយប្រជាជនកើនឡើងគាត់ត្រូវការដីលំនៅឋានគាត់ត្រូវការធ្វើចម្ការធ្វើស្រែបាទហើយមួយទៀតដោយសារឃើញថាតកតងនឹងកំណើនអញ្ចឹងរដ្ឋាភិបាលមានគោលនយោបាយតកតងរឿងដីសម្បទានសង្គមកិច្ចសម្រាប់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋអញ្ចឹងមានកាប់ដីព្រៃមួយចំនួនទៅឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋដែលគាត់រស់នៅក្នុងតំបន់នោះតែខ្វះដីសម្រាប់ធ្វើការ
Many Asian nations have converted forest land into farmland. Agriculture brings a stable way of living compared to hunting and gathering in a forest. Vuan is a farmer who lives in Oda Menche, Cambodia. 10 years ago, he slashed and burned trees to build his farm. Most of Cambodia's population cannot cook without trees. 90% of people use wood and coal to cook. Because they depend on trees as their main source of energy, they can't imagine living without trees. They even need logs for raising livestock. This livestock farmer burns one log every day for his cattle. The smoke from the firewood keeps the mosquitoes at bay. This is another factor contributing to deforestation.
대부분의 개도국의 사람들은 뭔가 막대한 부를 창출을 하기 위해서 그 숲을 파괴를 하는 일을 하게 되는 게 아니잖아요. 자신들의 하루하루의 이제 삶을 영위를 하기 위해서 이제 숲을 이용을 하게 되는 건데 갑자기 하루아침에 뭐 전 지구적인 차원에서의 그런 보호를 위해서 자신들이 쓰던 숲을 더 이상 활용을 하지 못하게 한다면 그 삶을 영위하는 데 매우 큰 어려움을 직면하게 되는 거죠. 이제 그렇기 때문에 어떤 다른 인센티브를 제공한다거나 아니면 다른 대안을 찾는 것이 매우 중요한 일이라고 생각합니다.
The $1.7 million that Microsoft paid to Cambodia's Oda Menchi region is fair compensation for the temple's preservation efforts. Money is a vital component in laying a foundation to protecting forests. And the money was used to make the forest greener. A tree nursery was made to grow saplings, which were then planted, and mosquito spray was used instead of burning wood to ward off mosquitoes. These steps have made it possible to continue living without damaging the forest.
Normally, these local people, they just simply cut their trees and they use the products or sell the products in the market. That is how they get income. But now, through this kind of initiative, they are getting another option. And then they protect the forest, sell the carbon, and then now they know how to earn another income. That is also changing their mindset into protection of their own forests.
Trees are made from carbon, and carbon credits have monetary value. The locals have traded in carbon credits for the last 5 years. During that time, there have been many changes. The forest has grown back, and the nation's future has become brighter. It is not only beneficial to Cambodia's future, but to ours as well. With a population of 400,000, the city of Talat is in one of the top major cities in Vietnam. Because its elevation is at 1,500 meters, the climate is mild all year round and attracts many vacationers. But not too long ago, the city was beset with a problem. The city suffered frequent blackouts. This led to complaints from the residents. What was causing the power outages? It was occurring due to problems at the hydropower plant. In recent years, the water level at the reservoir has dropped dramatically. This made it difficult to produce enough electricity.
Đối với sản lượng thiết kế chúng tôi là gần 1,2 tỷ kWh. Nhưng mà năm 2015 thì chúng tôi chỉ phát được có là 740 triệu kWh thôi.
The water shortage has caused other problems beside power outages. Supplying drinking water to the city residents has also become harder. The water in the reservoir has become contaminated due to low water levels. And filtering this water takes more money and time as a result. Heavier use of chemicals to treat the water poses a health risk to the residents.
Tức là ở đây thì cái mực nước mà khai thác ở đây là 8 mét nước khai thác. Nhưng có thời điểm họ xuống còn có 3 mét nước khai thác. Thì rõ ràng khi mà cái lượng nước mà còn 3 mét nước khai thác á, thì rõ ràng cái lượng mà bùn nắng nó sẽ vô rất là khủng khiếp, vô trong cái rất là nhiều vô trong cái họng thu nước thô của mình. Nó gây nên cái sự xử lý nước rất khó khăn.
What is causing the water shortage in the reservoir? To find the source of the problem, government investigators are studying the area. During their investigation, they found that villages in the upper regions of the river cut many trees to make way for farmland. trees retain water during rainfall and filter the water naturally. But deforestation has removed this natural process. The Vietnamese government demanded the residents to use less wood, but nothing changed. So the government came up with a new idea to improve the water supply.
Và cái tiền này nó đem lại cho người dân một việc nữa là đánh vào cái nhận thức là cho người dân là người ta không đi phá rừng, tự người ta thiếu ăn thì người ta đi phá rừng để làm rẫy, nhưng người ta có tiền, có gạo ăn thì người ta giảm đi cái việc không phải đi phá rừng.
This service provides money to residents in exchange for their effort in preserving the forests. If the villagers living in the upper regions manage their part of the forest land appropriately, the hydropower plant will be able to produce more electricity. All the while, the water treatment facilities will also benefit, providing a better utility service to people. Vietnam established a fund to oversee this payment service. Villagers now receive fair compensation for their work in protecting the forests.
Protects its forest, which generates water for the area nearby for agriculture, which generates carbon storage, which generates better biodiversity for people to see and enjoy. This good action of protecting the forest is not rewarded. There is no payment for all these ecosystem services. So to generate very important public goods, to encourage that, you need to pay for these ecosystem services. So the farmer or the forester or the landowner who is holding and preserving the forest for the benefit of public has to be paid. That is payment for ecosystem services.
The lives of the locals have changed. In the past, the villagers raised the forest to convert it into farmland to make a living. But now they make a sizable income from preserving the forest. Their regular rounds in taking care of the forest has led to a fall in forest fires, and the reservoir has regained its normal water levels. The stable income the villagers get has changed their lives in a positive way.
Dạ có sẵn sàng cái đó rất là họ thích. Tất cả mình nói đi ở đây là thôn Nông Lanh, tất cả hầu như là hết luôn toàn xã này là họ thích nhất là bảo vệ rừng. Tại vì có cái này mới được có gạo ăn, đấy, có được cơm ăn hàng ngày, cuộc sống hơi tốt đẹp hơn. Sau này con cái mình học hành càng tiến bộ hơn, nâng cao hơn.
Power outages are a thing of the past now. The villagers no longer have to deal with rolling blackouts. The Vietnamese saw the need to pay fair compensation to the people that ultimately solve their problems by simply servicing the forests.
We only think that goods in the shopping mall have got value. We only think that financial capital has got value. We don't understand that ecosystem services are also valuable and that natural capital is also valuable. So the number one change is the change in mindset. To think of natural capital on the same level as financial capital, it's valuable. Yes, it may be public goods and services. Yes, it may not belong to you personally, but it belongs to society. So we need to value it, number one, which is a mindset change.
Many academics have researched the public value of a forest. In 1968, Garrett Harding wrote an article for Science magazine called The Tragedy of the Commons. Each pursuing his own best interest in a society believes in the freedom of the commons. But freedom in the commons brings ruin to all. In other words, since there is no one person or group who owns a forest, not using it would be seen as a loss because it's free. But when a problem arises with a common property, no individual takes responsibility, causing everyone to lose. To solve this issue, people need to work together for the greater good.
주인이 없는 물건, 사실 그런 물건이면 먼저 갖다 쓰는 사람이 임자라고 해서 그 물건은 곧 소실되거나 망가질 겁니다. 내 물건이라고 하면 그 경제적 가치를 지키기 위해서 굉장히 악착 같아지는 거거든요. 따라서 우리의 숲을 지키고 우리에게 경제적 가치를 주는 숲이 계속 유지하기 위해서는 바로 그 숲의 주인이 누구인지, 그리고 그 숲을 관리해야 될 대상이 누구인지에 대한 명확한 인식과 그런 형태를 만들어주는 것이 무엇보다 중요합니다.
To overcome the commoner's dilemma, where something owned by everyone ends up being no one's property, a sense of ownership and responsibility needs to settle in our minds. Yet it is human nature to not be motivated without a personal incentive. Sadly, using a moral or ethical argument to change people's behavior is an ineffective approach. That is why financial component has been brought in to address deforestation. To take good care of a common resource that everyone benefits from, an incentive needs to be added to motivate people. That incentive is money.
You should change because it is good for your children, etc. Most people don't seem to listen to that. Then you could try the intellectual argument and say that you should do so because otherwise, your children will be sick or etc. That doesn't seem to work either. And so the only solution I can think of is to try to create a situation where the ordinary person has a short-term benefit from choosing what is good for the children.
Let's look at the Korean character for the forest once again. What do you see when you look at this character? Can you finally see it as a symbol for money? Depending on what tool of measurement you use to ascertain the value of a forest, the value will fluctuate. Some people regard a forest as a place where there are many trees. Then there are people who perceive a forest as a place for rest. Depending on their viewpoint, a forest can mean different things to different people. A forest is spoken in different languages with different connotations. And we may never fully comprehend their meaning in different countries. But it is obvious that when we come to realize the true nature of a forest, the forest will then reveal its unlimited possibilities to us.
Siapa yang kuat itu yang mempunyai. Karena kan di sini masih waktu itu masih ada hukum rimba lah. Kita mau masuk di dalam kawasan yang ada di sini ini takut-takut dan lah sembunyi-sembunyi. Nah ini sebelum ada kerjasama dengan KPH tahun 2013 kemarin itu.
Mengapa kami menggarap di area hutan kawasan ini, yaitu hutan lindung, yaitu untuk mendapatkan penghasilan yang lebih baik lagi. Akan tetapi pada saat kami bekerja, timbullah pertanyaan dalam diri kami. Apakah kami bisa menggarap di lahan kawasan ini terus? Apakah kami bisa menikmati hasil kerja kami? Terus bagaimana status kami di sini? Karena kami menyadari bahwa lahan yang kami garap ini, lahan hutan lindung ini adalah milik pemerintah. Dan dari situlah timbul keinginan kami untuk mendapatkan izin dari pemerintah.
Chempaka Forestry Partnership is located in the area of Waiwaya Protected Forest Register 22, which is part of Protected Forest Management Unit of Batutegi, Pringsewa Regency, Lampung Province.
KPH Batutegi ini 76% lebih tidak lagi berupa hutan, tetapi sudah berupa lahan garapan petani. Pertanian lahan kering campur semak. Hanya seluas 10.000 hektar saja yang menjadi blok inti. Selebihnya itu merupakan blok pemanfaatan yang ditargetkan akan menjadi area PS 100%. Karena di dalamnya memang sudah ada petani.
Tahun 2013 terbentuklah kelompok tani hutan, tergabung dan menjadi Gapoktan Hutan. Kami diberikan penjelasan tentang pengelolaan hutan yang ada di Indonesia. Salah satu dari kelolaan hutan itu adalah dengan pola kemitraan. Dengan kelola hutan berbasis kemitraan ini kami akan lebih mudah untuk mendapatkan izin garap itu.
According to the Forestry Partnership Agreement between Batutegi PFMU with Chempaka Forest Farmer Group, the plant that is agreed to be developed is nutmeg trees or Myristica fragrans. The farmers can plant 7,500 nutmeg trees and earn a profit share of 20% starting from year 6.
Sekarang alhamdulillah setelah KPH masuk ke sini, kita dibina, kita diberi kekuasaan yang jelas tentang masalah surat-surat menyuratnya kan.
Karena dengan izin itu kami bisa bekerja dengan tenang, dengan aman, dan kami merasa terlindungi oleh pemerintah. Yang semula kami disebut sebagai perambah, berubah menjadi petani hutan.
Yang boleh mengelola itu hanyalah per kelompok. Itu pun kan kelompok itulah sendiri yang mempunyai.
As a research institution, Forest Research and Development Center, in cooperation with AFoCO, invite Chempaka Forest Farmer Groups to increase land cover by establishing agroforestry demonstration plots consisting of forest trees, annual crops, and non-timber forest products.
Demplot agroforestry ini berada pada luasan 10 hektar, terdiri atas 10 demplot, 4 demplot dikerjakan secara bersama-sama, dan yang 6 demplot diserahkan kepada masing-masing kelompok.
Luas lahan saya 1 hektar. Ini pala yang saya tanam 40 batang masuk ke kemitraan Chempaka.
Dari beberapa rangkaian kegiatan yang telah dilakukan dalam lingkup kerjasama ASEAN Korea Forest Cooperation dengan Pusat Litbang Hutan dan memiliki MOU dengan KPHL Batutegi, kegiatan utama yang kita lakukan adalah kegiatan penanaman. Kegiatan penanaman ini bertujuan untuk meningkatkan jumlah tanaman, baik tanaman hutan maupun tanaman hasil hutan bukan kayu, kemudian meningkatkan tutupan lahan hutan dan meningkatkan pemberdayaan masyarakat dan partisipasi masyarakat dalam mengelola hutan. Masyarakat dilibatkan langsung mengukur sendiri lokasi demplot dan nanti tanaman yang ditanam pun mereka ambil titik koordinatnya menggunakan GPS secara langsung.
KPH mengajak masyarakat bersama-sama agar mereka tahu GPS ini penggunaannya, mereka tahu batas demplotnya ini, keluasannya sekian, masalah-masalah apa yang bisa dikemukakan di situ, semuanya bisa diketahui dengan cepat supaya masyarakat luar juga bisa mengetahui.
Jadi ini rangkaian dari fasilitasi peningkatan kapasitas dari anggota kelompok.
Tree planting is one of the activities listed in the Chempaka Forestry Partnership Management Plan document that has been prepared previously by community forestry members. This activity is a series of facilitation undertaken by AFoCO, complementing previous facilitation from AFoCO. Among others, GIS training, participatory mapping, livelihood development, area and community profiling, preparation of annual management plan, and transfer of technology for preparing nursery and organic fertilizer.
Kita dikasih pelatihan-pelatihan untuk masalah pembibitan, pemupukan, dan penanaman. Untuk pemeliharaan daripada tanaman yang ada di sini ini, kita melalui proses satu harus ada pemupukan awal. Dalam pemupukan itu 3 bulan sekali kerjasama dengan AFoCO. Dan untuk pembersihan gulma-gulma kayak rumput gitu, kita kerjakan bersama-sama bergotong royong antar kelompok.
Kita terlebih dahulu mengadakan diskusi membahas jenis tanaman apa yang diminati oleh petani anggota kelompok. Di samping tanaman HHBK, di sini kita juga mengadakan pengayaan terhadap jenis-jenis tanaman hutan. Untuk tanaman hutan disepakati adalah tanaman pala, juga ada cengkeh, ada maja, damar mata kucing, manggis, cempaka kuning yang memiliki banyak manfaat. Lada perdu bukan lada sulur, jadi lebih cepat panen. Kemudian untuk empon-empon diantaranya adalah jahe merah dan temulawak. Masyarakat berpartisipasi dalam menyediakan sebagian bibit pisang, serai, dan gamal.
Kami ingin sekali memperbanyak jenis tanaman dari yang sudah kami dapat dari pelatihan-pelatihan itu bisa kami kembangkan di sini. Ini bibit cempaka ini, kita dapat sekitar 300 batang bibit cempaka. Ini damar mata kucing. Bibit cempaka dan bibit damar itu memang kami butuhkan terutama untuk ditempatkan di sumber-sumber mata air. Dari pemerintah menganjurkan bahwa kami bukan untuk memanen kayunya, tapi HHBK, hasil hutan bukan kayu. Jadi terutama buah ataupun getah. Terus untuk cengkeh, kondisi tanah kami sangat cocok kalau ditanamin dengan cengkeh. Karena sudah kami tanam beberapa tahun yang lalu, umur 4 tahun itu sudah belajar berbuah. Dan pertumbuhannya memang sangat bagus.
Dampak dari perubahan iklim saat ini sangat terasa, terutama untuk orang yang melakukan kegiatan penanaman. Kadang-kadang sepanjang tahun tuh hujan terus, tapi juga nanti ada suatu waktu musim kemarau yang berkepanjangan. Untuk itu kita memerlukan beberapa trik kalau ingin menanam supaya mengantisipasi ketidakpastian adanya musim penghujan atau musim kemarau. Misalnya kita bisa memberikan naungan. Apalagi kalau tanaman yang kita tanam itu memang di awal pertumbuhannya itu cenderung membutuhkan naungan atau tidak bisa langsung kena cahaya matahari terus-menerus gitu. Kemudian teknik yang lain yang bisa kita lakukan itu untuk mencegah terjadinya kekeringan itu adalah dengan cara pemulsaan. Jadi menutup daerah sekitar tanah itu dengan bahan-bahan yang bisa menahan terjadinya penguapan air dari tanah.
Dalam menjaga kelembaban tanah, mengantisipasi kemarau panjang atau misalnya hujan terlambat begitu, kita menggunakan mulsa. Kebiasaan orang sini, kearifan lokal di sini kita gunakan tadi seperti tadi pelepah pisang, alang-alang, kadang daun aren atau daun kelapa gitu. Inovasi tadi kita peroleh dari kebiasaan petani di sini. Terus kita pelajari secara ilmiahnya dirancang sehingga kita pengaruhnya terhadap pertumbuhan tanaman itu gimana gitu. Misalnya dari mulsa yang tradisional seperti ini, pelapa pisang atau apa, terus dibandingkan dengan menggunakan plastik sehingga bisa ramah lingkungan dan lebih murah. Tapi secara ilmiah bisa dipertanggungjawabkan.
Kami juga ingin dari hasil hutan itu bisa untuk peningkatan ekonomi di kelompok kami. Dan kami juga merasa bahwa kita harus juga ada kontribusinya kepada pemerintah.
Ketika petani sudah bisa menyumbangkan 20% dari hasil kemitraan ini kepada pemerintah daerah, maka kami yakin bahwa fungsi hutan itu sudah kembali. Pohon ini hanya bisa panen ketika pohon ini besar. Jadi pasti areal ini sudah hijau. Di sebelah sana itu masih kelihatan gundul. 3 tahun lagi, walaupun belum panen, pasti sudah hijau.